Wonderful. All right. Well, once again, welcome everyone. I'm so pleased that you've joined us today. My name is Meredith Pellrine. I am the Humanities Career Engagement Specialist. So I'm a staff member. I work in the Humanities Division, and I plan career events and other kinds of programming just like this for humanities students that show you the different kinds of things that you can do with the humanities degree. I'm going to turn things over to our guest, Kristen, to please introduce herself, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the plan for today.
So I'm Kristen Amicone. I am talking to you from down here in San Diego. Not so sunny today, as I just said. I currently work for the San Diego County Office of Education. I graduated from UCSC approximately 4 million years ago. Have worked in the nonprofit sector since then, and am now really enjoying my time in education. I'm also currently working on my doctorate. I should be defending here in about a week and a half, defending my dissertation. So apologies, I already told Meredith, but my brain is a little bit of oatmeal and mashed bananas right now. So I'm going to do my best to remain eloquent and make sure that you can understand what I'm trying to say.
Thanks so much, Kristen. We're so glad you're here. I am dropping in the chat. I dropped it earlier, but for anyone who has joined since, I'm dropping a link to our little raffle for you to please enter to win a humanities tumbler. So I will be writing to you after the event is over. I'll write to all the attendees and let folks know who won that. So the plan for today is we will spend about 45 minutes going through some questions that I prepared in advance that we'll talk through with Kristen. And then at the end of that time, I will turn things over to you and give you the chance to ask any questions that you might want to. So please, through our conversation, if something comes up that you wish I had dug into a little bit deeper that you're curious about, or if another topic comes to mind that you're curious about in relation to Kristen's experience, please keep that in mind, and we'll have those 15 minutes at the end there for you to ask those questions. Um, with all that out of the way, let's dive in. We'll go ahead and get started. So first, to start things off, Kristen, if you could please briefly describe for us your career trajectory from your undergraduate experience to what you're doing now.
I started at a junior college in Riverside. After a couple years there, I moved to UC Santa Cruz. While I was at UCSC, I got some really interesting opportunities, particularly internships. So I interned with two labor unions, the SEIU Local 521 and then the AFL-CIO. And with that, I was able to spend a couple months in Florida, door knocking and that kind of thing. It was really fun. After I graduated, I went to San Diego State University, where I've lived since, for my master's degree. I got all the way through my courses, I got all the way through a bunch of research, and then I ran out of money and I never finished my thesis. So I got all that way and just barely made it. Um, in a panic, started applying to jobs and was lucky enough to land in the nonprofit sector where I stayed for nearly 15 years. And after that, I moved to where I am now, which is education. And around 2022, while I was still working in nonprofit, as a full-time worker, I started doing my online master's. From there, my doctorate, which I'm almost done with. So I think that's everything.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you for that. And if we can kind of rewind a little bit to your time at UCSC, how would you say that I know that you got a degree in what was at the time women's studies, now called feminist studies.
Mhm.
How would you say that your feminist studies degree and more generally the skills that you learned studying the humanities, how would you say that that has served you in your work as you think about that path of your career trajectory overall and the twists and turns along the way?
Yeah. So I think the most important thing that I gained from my time was the ability to think really critically and ask good questions, not only of other people, but of myself. What are priorities? Where are we coming from? What are our current positions? What do we need to be looking for? What do we need to be looking toward? And all the background in theory, I think really helped. During my time, there was a focus on praxis, which is that combination of theory and practice into one. And I think I've continued that in my work since then, and I think it's really helped.
Fantastic, fantastic. And staying with your experience as an undergraduate and before beginning your career, I know you came to UCSC as a transfer student, as you said. How do you think your prior community college experience set you up for success at UCSC? Were there any specific skills or qualities that you saw yourself bringing to your studies and that you've seen other transfer students have, either in classes or in navigating the university?
So, starting a little bit before then, um, I I'm grateful to myself that I had enough self-reflection when I graduated high school to know that I was not ready for a four-year university at that time. I wasn't ready to spend the money. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. And going to a community college and having that experience allowed me to explore a little bit, to try a bunch of different classes, to work at the same time. So I worked at the Disneyland Resort, then I went to school. And both of those really helped me mature and get to a point where I finally had a trajectory. So I took my first, what was then called Women's Studies class, in the sociology department at Riverside Community College. And it opened my eyes. It's like the world cracked open, and I finally knew where I needed to go. So with that, it was just a matter of doing my research, figuring out what schools had the good programs. I looked at some photos of the UCSC campus and fell absolutely in love. There was no question. I don't even know if I applied at many other schools. It was just kind of a foregone conclusion for me. So that's how I came to be. So I think, and I don't think this is true for all transfer students, but for me, having been able to go through that self-discovery as a younger person and have a really strong idea of what I wanted to do, and back then I wanted to do academia, um, helped me just get through. I had a goal, and with that goal, I had a vision, and from there, I was just able to work through. I also worked at, I'm not sure if it still exists, but there was a STARS office in
Mm,
Kresge.
mhm.
So I worked there for a while, and I was able to meet other transfer and reentry students. I was able to make a terrific group of friends, all of us having a similar background. And it was a great way to do things.
The way you put that, the world cracked open, I love that, and that resonates so much with things that I hear, especially from other transfer students, and also from students, who maybe started at a four-year university but had that moment where they first encountered the subject that, oh, this kind of unlocked something in me and in how I want to see the world. That's such a lovely way to put that. Is there any advice that you would share specifically with anyone who's on the call or listening to the recording later who is a transfer student?
Um, you know yourself, I would
Mm,
say. You're coming in a little bit older and a little bit wiser. Um, and meeting people for me, I think, as I said, meeting people with a similar background really helped because we had a lot in common. And coming in with only 2 years to pack in the college experience, it's just a little bit different. So I would just say you stay the course. Stay the course, and also, even if you have a plan in mind, don't be afraid to take risks.
mm. Love that. That's something that I often hear in these job talks, the don't be afraid to take a risk, a calculated risk, knowing yourself and knowing the circumstance, but to be willing to take some kinds of risks. On that note, I would love to pivot a little to moving to talk about some of your professional pivots, which you've navigated a number of, right? From first, shifting your plan when you were originally in grad school the first time around, to moving from nonprofit work into the focus on education programming, and then deciding to go back to grad school now and pursue first your master and then the Doctor of Education program that you're doing now. Each of those times, how did you decide to make those transitions? And maybe as you go, I'll kind of ask a follow-up question on what drew you to some of those specific fields that you've switched between.
Sure. Let's talk about the first one first. So, originally, as I said, wanted to go into academia. My time at San Diego State University, just made it clear to me that that wasn't going to be the path that was going to make me the happiest. Academia, tends to be a real solo act. You are working in a silo. It is your research. It is very individual. And I'm more of a team sports person. I always have been. So after I realized that and all of my money left, I sort of cast around and I thought, okay, I have some choices. I need money. I need to get a job. Where do I want to go? Um, and I want to make something clear because I do get this question every once in a while. When you work for a nonprofit, you are on payroll. You do get a paycheck. You get a 401k. All these things that normal corporations offer, nonprofits also offer. The difference for me is that you work at a corporation and you give your 40 or 60 or however many hours a week, and all of the profit goes to getting the CEO their third jet, right? And I wasn't super interested in that, and I didn't really find any companies that made me excited. And what I wanted to do was help. That's why I wanted to go into academia. I wanted to let people think. I wanted to watch people grow. And I found that I could do that in nonprofit. So I applied to every nonprofit I could get my hands on, everyone who had an opening, everybody got an application. And I will say, for those of you who are interested in nonprofit work, one of the, I think, best points of information I can offer is that you can choose where to give your money if you're giving a donation, or if you're volunteering, you can choose your own organization. When you're trying to get hired, you go to the organization that will have you, right? There's a lot less choice there. So I landed in an organization. I ended up being able to move from an administrative assistant to director level in like 6, 8 years, something like that. Ended up leading a national education program, which was very, very cool. And I would never have gotten those types of opportunities in a big corporation. There are more layers, there are more people vying for jobs. And I was a part of what's known as a micro nonprofit, a micro organization. So in every nonprofit I was a part of, we had fewer than 12 employees at any given time. So that means a couple things. It means first, you have to do everything, including like moving tables and chairs, even if you have a very fancy title. But secondly, it means that you get to take really big swings. It means that if you see something, if you see a grant that you think you could pursue, you can apply for it. And that means that you can grow very quickly if you're in the kind of organization that can have it. So, did nonprofit work, got my master's degree, and then I just felt like I needed to do something different. And I also reached a point a few years ago where I needed better benefits. So I looked at government work, because with government work comes really tremendous benefits. I saw an opportunity at the San Diego County Office of Education, and I have been here now for 2 years. So I think that's it.
And the what you were saying about the specific things to kind of note in nonprofit work, I think that's, I mean, everything that you listed there is so helpful, both from the starting with your application, like understanding you need to be willing to apply maybe to a wider range because you're going to get the job at the place you get the job, and that's where you'll go. And down to the, sort of day to day of what it's like being in a really small organization, where, as you say, like everyone wears a lot of hats, including the person with the fanciest title is still going to be helping to move the chairs and maybe sometimes make the coffee, at least from my experience, and all of that. Um, how would you, this wasn't one of my original questions, but I'm going to go off script just a little bit. How would you characterize the difference between that and government work if you were to sort of set up the things to note about government work in the same way you did for nonprofits there?
Absolutely. So I went from an organization of, let me think, at the time, I think we had exactly 12 employees, to an organization of nearly 1,300. And at my new organization, we are a part of unions. We have very specific contracts. We need to stay within the bounds of our duties and what our job is described as. So our actual job description, we're constrained there. And I haven't been used to that. I haven't been used to, no, you really can only do these things that are in your job description, and you have to stay in your lane, and someone else is doing that other work. And I also wasn't used to, there's like a whole team to move the tables, and
Mhm.
that's their job. And they want to move the tables because that's their job. I remember at one special event I was at within the first 2 months that I was hired, we literally needed to move some tables from one end to the other. And I went over to a group of people who were just standing and talking, a group of my new colleagues. And I said, hey, maybe we could help these guys move these tables. And they looked at me like I had grown an extra head, like I was not speaking a language they understood. It was completely beyond the pale. And I realized then that the culture was just very different. So for me, that's taken a lot of getting used to. And that's the primary difference in my experience. I will also say, however, that not having to worry about whether or not we'll make budget this year. I mean, this year is a little bit different, that aside. Generally, not worrying about that every minute of every day has been wonderful. Knowing that I'll be doing what I'm doing now for a very long time if I want to is comforting in a way that it hasn't been in the past. So I've really enjoyed it. It's been interesting, and it has we all need to check our ego sometimes, and it has been an ego check for me, which is wonderful. I don't know everything. It turns out, I know.
A delightful surprise, really, admittedly.
Always, every time.
It sounds like one of the big distinctions I'm hearing here is kind of predictability across the board in government work, right? In terms of like both the benefit side and in terms of like the job duty side and in terms of the stability long term and the budget and all of that pieces of it, the current circumstances of the particular political situation we're in now aside. Um, that's very helpful. Can you speak a little more? You started to talk about this, but can you speak a little bit more to when you were making the transition decision, going
Mhm.
back to this idea of pivots, the transition decision between nonprofit work and going into your current position, what specifically drew you to education programming? What was your kind of thought process there?
So I had been in education. So I had been through my nonprofit work doing programming in schools for that nearly the entire time. Internet safety presentations, I created them. That was the national program that I ran. I built a team, all that. So that was part of nonprofit. Also in the nonprofit sector, I ran a group of about 150 older adult volunteers who would go into schools and work with children on literacy. And so moving toward the actual education sector for me was a really natural move because I had been in and around schools for so long, even though I wasn't an employee of them. I felt like I sort of knew the culture, and I had dedicated most of my life to student welfare, well-being, and growth. And to be able to do that in a more direct way was really appealing to me.
Mhm. That makes so much sense. And what was sort of the moment or the thing that made you know it was time to go back to school?
Oh, I think I was just bored. I think I was a little bored and I was looking for something new.
Mm,
It was right before I made the career transition over to a new sector. So I think I was just kind of searching for that new thing, and the master's program was so fun, and I had a great time doing it. And I think about halfway through, I realized that that wasn't going to fulfill whatever it was I was looking for.
mm,
Um, though I'm so happy I did it. That was
mm.
that was a great decision. It was kind of a mistake, but it was a great decision.
So it sounds like when you were in the application process, you were, like fully knowing you were going to be continuing to work. You didn't know yet that you were going to be in this different job, but you knew that that was going to be, that you were going to be a full-time employee and also a working student. How did
Absolutely.
that factor into your thought processes on, when to go to grad school, on what kind of program to pursue? Just like when you were making that transitional decision, how were you thinking about that?
I think a lot of it had to do with my finances, that I finally got to a point where, first of all of my loans from my previous stints in school were all paid off, thankfully. And being in the nonprofit sector helped that because I was able to get some of those fees waived, or some of my loans waived. Very fortunate to be able to do that. Very, very fortunate. Not everybody in the nonprofit sector, even those who had been working exactly as long as I had, was able to access that because of paperwork issues and all that. So I consider myself very fortunate. So I was finally at a point where I felt like I could afford to pay as I went rather than taking out more loans, which was very good. And I did some research about so my master's specifically was in nonprofit management. And I did some research on what the different programs locally and online offered, what I might be able to do at work because of them, and how that might be able to spur me to like the next level to become, C-suite, that kind of thing. So I think does that answer your question? I think that's kind of what
Mhm.
went into it. Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then so when you finished that master's and you decided you were going to stay at the same institution and instead pursue a doctor of education, tell us more about that decision. So you finished the master's, you determined, okay, that wasn't quite, I think, what I was looking for. Then what happened?
So it turned out that I remembered how much I loved school. And if you're going to go to grad school, you have to really love school, because it's so exhausting and there's so much work. So I remembered how much joy it brought me and how much thinking through problems and writing about them, um, just how much that fulfilled me. So when I heard that my school had a doctorate program, I think they sent out an email like, "Hey, you're almost graduating. Here's this other thing that you could do." I applied kind of on a lark, um, and didn't realize that the program that I applied for was actually pretty competitive and just happened to get accepted right off. Usually you have to apply twice or three times, for those people who make it in. And I got really lucky. I think the fact that I had already been at the school helped. Um, and the fact that I was coming from the nonprofit sector rather than something more corporate or government, even because there are a lot of people in my program who come from both sectors, I think that helped too. But I really enjoyed it. And if anyone wants to hear more about how a doctorate looks like online, I'd be happy to have a very long conversation with you.
Fantastic. Oh, yeah. I mean, let's dive into that. Hopefully, we can get at least a little taste of it. Maybe not the full scope, but yeah, what has that experience been like being online?
Yeah. So my program, and I think for most doctorate level online programs, require you to attend concurrent classes. So you actually have perhaps not a formal cohort in the way that some programs do. But for us, it's an informal cohort of students who started when you did and move through. So we get to spend at least an hour once a week together where we talk through heady concepts, where we talk about how this reflects, because all of us are professionals, how this reflects in our professional life and how our professional lives are feeding our research interests. And on top of the school part, which is honestly kind of the easier part of the programs, you then do your own research and then you write your dissertation about it. So just like always, it's pretty solo work. Thankfully, in my program, they allow us to, if the program is right, um, or if the project is right, they allow us to partner up. So I actually have a research partner who I've been doing everything with, and that for me has been really helpful. Because as I said, I like being a team player. So
And I'm realizing it maybe would be helpful for students here who might not be as familiar. Can you talk a little bit more about just generally like a doctor of education? What I know you said that many of the people in your cohort are coming from that corporate background or a government background. Can you talk a little bit more about the kinds of people who tend to be drawn to that, what the school structure is usually like?
yeah. So I am not pursuing my PhD. I'm pursuing my EDD, which is Doctorate of Education. Just like an MD is a medical doctor, we have all these different kinds of doctors, right? So this is an EDD, and the subject is leadership studies. So I went in thinking that I was going to do research on how to lead volunteers because it's much different than leading staff. It's changed because my job changed, obviously. But because of the research interests, you do get a lot of people who are higher up in the government. We get some military folks. We get people who are in education. We get people who are in the corporate track, who, for whatever reason, are interested in learning more about how organizations work, about how people work within those organizations, and how we can all help ourselves work better and achieve bigger and better goals together. I
Mm.
guess.
Mm. And the folks who you see in these programs, um, and your own experience, do people often have an idea of once I complete this, I'm going to make a transition to something else? Or is it many people in a circumstance where it's, I'm going to complete this and this is really going to add to my professional experience as it is currently? Like I'm going to kind of stay where I am since it sounds like people are really drawing upon their current experiences already.
I think I think it's exactly both.
Mm.
I think there's always the hope that if you take a big step like that and take a big swing and put in this much effort, that you'll see something on the back end. I think you'd be very hard pressed to find someone for whom that isn't true. Um, but for the most part, in my experience, most of my classmates are really pursuing this because they just really want to, because they want to do the research and they want to get it done and they want to, why do you climb the mountain? Because it's
Mm.
there, because you just have to scale it because it's pulling you. So I think
Mm.
that's a lot of it. And if you don't have that, then I would encourage you to wait and not spend the money. If it really is just, I need to check this box because I'll probably get a promotion if I do it, I don't see a doctorate being worth that personally.
Mm.
It's a
Mm.
lot of work. It's so much work.
And you're right in the thick of it now as we're talking to you, so you're all the more aware. Um, that's really helpful. And that really connects to my next question, which is kind of your advice generally. I'm going to step back actually and ask first, what advice would you give for students who are interested specifically in going into nonprofit work, your first area of expertise? I'll leave it at that, and then we'll kind of move on to advice in other realms.
Yeah, so about nonprofit, I will just reiterate that when you're looking to work in nonprofits, you just need to be very clear about what you have control over and what you don't have control over. So there are so many nonprofits out there doing such good work. Um, Food pantries, help with things like domestic violence. I donate to butterfly farms down here. They're actually a nonprofit and their whole mission is butterflies, which is wonderful. I love seeing that money leave my account every month. Um, but when you're applying for jobs, you can't choose to go work on butterfly farms. So I would say if you're looking to join nonprofits as a salaried worker, and you have something very specific in mind, either a specific organization or a specific mission, which might be any number of organizations near you, start volunteering. If you
Mm.
can spare $5 a month, give. Sign up for their newsletters. Find out absolutely everything you can about the mission, the organization, pull their 990s, look at how much money they're bringing in, what they're spending, really get to know them. The more you get to know them, the more you get to know the people, the more likely you are to get a foot in the door, if that's what you're looking to do. If you're just looking to join nonprofits, then I would say cast a very wide net and be willing to go in knowing that the grunt work exists and you will probably be doing it just like everyone should be doing it, especially if the organization is small. Um, I really loved it. And if you have a pull toward nonprofit, I would say go for it. Know that you probably won't be making as much as you would if you're at a corporation. Know that the benefits won't be as good as it may be for a corporation or government work or anything like that. But for me, every minute was worth it. Like I know that I made a difference in so many people's lives. And that to me made up for the lack in money. That didn't last forever, obviously. I've left. But I look back on that time and I'm really grateful for the opportunities I had.
Mm. And it also sounds like, as you were saying, like maybe, not a field that you stayed in forever, but everything that you learned and your expertise from there was what set you up for where you are now. Does that seem fair and accurate to say?
1,000%, yeah.
Mm. Fantastic. Well, then moving to your new area of expertise, or rather like continuing thread of expertise, what about for students who are interested in careers in education or in education programming specifically? What advice might you give there?
Um, if you can be a part-time substitute teacher, it's a really great way to gain some experience, get to know people, and to figure out if it's the right job for you, for teaching specifically. Um, we really are in desperate need of good teachers, people who care, people who are dedicated. We are also in need of people who to do the admin work. So a degree in education doesn't just mean teaching. It can mean anything from front office staff to working. I work at the county office of education. There are county offices of education everywhere throughout the country. We do very interesting work. We support the people who are supporting teachers. So we do things like create training modules so that everyone in the county gets the same types of training that they need that's state mandated, that kind of thing. So don't think that just because you're going into education means that teaching is your only path. There are so many options. Um, Job boards are a great place to start, even if you don't apply, just to kind of get an idea of the breadth of opportunities that are out there for you, and what you might want to pursue, what you might be interested in. Um, if you are, if you will be in school for another year or two and you're interested in moving to education, I would say, if you can, maybe apply to an after-school program to work there or volunteer. Summer programs always need great people, and sometimes they'll even give room and board depending on where you go. So it's a good opportunity to build the resume, to get out there and get to know people, which is halfway to getting a job, I find.
Mm, so true, so true. And I'll take sort of the jump to expand that as advice for all. I think that everything you just said there about basically experiential learning, right? Like finding, even if you're not sure what specific area you want to go into, finding something that you have that bit of curiosity about to start with, getting some experience there, even if you end up wanting to go in a totally different direction, having gotten that bit of experience will give you those skills that you can then use to find something else, right? As well as telling you more about what the field is like and meeting people and doing that networking piece that you're alluding to as well. Mm, fantastic. Wonderful. Well, that covers all of the questions that I had planned in advance. Students, I would love to turn things over to you, please. What questions came up for you as we were having our conversation? Please feel very welcome to just unmute and ask your question directly. Please feel very welcome to put it in the chat, whichever you prefer.
And if you have questions, I would love to know your background, your major, what you're interested in doing
Mm.
as well.
I had a quick question. So I'm currently in the legal studies major, and my plan is to do law school, maybe not right after I'm done with undergrad. But my biggest question is, how would you compare the company culture in a nonprofit compared to a corporate environment, specifically with regarding, HR and that element?
That is a terrific question. So I will say for the organizations that I was a part of, as I mentioned earlier, they were micro organizations, very, very small. So we did not have a dedicated HR department, which led to some issues, as you may guess, just for some of them. For the San Diego County Office of Education, we have an entire HR department, where everything is set out for you and very clear from the time that you are in your pre-hire state to when you leave. So I can go into our intranet right now and see what I need to fill out in order to quit if I wanted to. So I would say the big differences are clarity, that in the County Office of Education, things are much clearer than they were in nonprofit. I would say in nonprofit, there's a lot more flexibility in general, and particularly in regard to HR. Um, for some nonprofits, like I know someone who is working in a place where she wasn't even offered an employee manual until 6 months in, and she had to search for it and ask for it, and it was, dusty in someone's desk. So I would say that those are the biggest differences. Um, Doing legal work for nonprofits can be very lucrative, just so you know, because they're generally willing to, they have something going on if they need you and they're willing to pay for it. Also, they'll always accept pro bono work if you're looking to volunteer. I have no doubt you'll be able to find yourself staying very busy.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Honore. I'm an environmental studies major, but I'm looking into going into kind of like education in the future. But I was wondering what the specific like titles were of your master's and PhD. I didn't quite catch those.
Of course. So I have an MS, Master of Science in Nonprofit Administration, and my doctorate will be an EDD, Doctorate of Education in Leadership Studies. And those are through the Louisiana State University system, in case anyone is interested in looking at a really solid online program.
And maybe I can just add a little additional kind of context. I know, Kristen, you already spoke earlier to your EDD being different from a PhD. One of the ways that we might think about that is a PhD is very much like an academic degree, right? People, of course, there are exceptions. People will get a PhD and go elsewhere sometimes, but it's generally considered it's an academic degree. Whereas an EDD is more of a professionalized degree that the idea is you get it and then you apply it out in the working world. Does that seem like a worthwhile distinction to you, Kristen?
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. I always forget what people know.
Fantastic questions, folks. What else comes to mind?
So I had a few more questions, but I wanted to give a chance for other people to ask questions as well. If there's nobody, then I'll just ask them. So
Please
the
dive in, Daniel. Yeah.
two questions are this. One is quick. Would you say that there's a very prevalent nepotism factor in the nonprofit industry? And also, would you say there's more room for upward mobility in the corporate, government, or nonprofit sectors? Like, how do they compare?
Ooh, those are
Mm.
good questions. I think nepotism exists everywhere. I think where I am now at the County Office of Ed, you are less likely to run into it because there are very strict guidelines about how hiring happens, and a lot of people have voice. So there are several steps to getting hired. There are several committees that are involved, and you're graded along the way. I think in a smaller organization, you may run into that. But in my experience for nonprofits, the organization really is looking, and leadership in the organization really is looking to get the best people involved because you really rely on each other. There is nobody else but you, and you rely on each other to do everything, including paying your own salaries. So, because of that, yes, maybe you'll bring in your cousin, but your cousin should be really good because you can't afford dead weight. You literally can't afford it financially, if that makes sense. And then your second question was, repeat it for me.
Did you notice? I know you left this nonprofit sector because there was lack of profit, but would you say there's more room for upward mobility in government or nonprofit positions?
I would say that I was able to be more upwardly mobile in nonprofits, but that doesn't mean I made a lot more. It means that I got a new title, and those are two entirely different things. I think that there are opportunities for mobility everywhere. But like paying your dues looks different depending on the sector and the specific organization. So the experience I had in my nonprofit would be different from yours, would be different from Meredith's, would be different from anybody's, because of what the experience you bring in, the relationships you build, and the organization itself. So it's hard to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a couple more questions about like what your current career looks like now, like your specific job. What kind of like work do you see yourself doing on the daily?
So a little bit more about county offices of education, just because I didn't know what they were until after I was hired. And I finally looked into it. So county offices of education, they don't run school districts. They exist over the county. They create training opportunities. They do things like fingerprinting. We also run several very small, niche, specialized schools. For instance, San Diego County Office of Ed, we have the School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. We also have schools that are associated with the juvenile court system. So those children who are in juvenile court, they still need to be educated. It's very important that they have solid education no matter what is going on in their lives. So we also maintain that. So we have teachers within San Diego County Office of Ed who are hired by us who run our schools. We also have admin. My personal job, I am on the administrative side, and my whole job is employee engagement and belongingness because it's important to my organization that every single employee know that they are, no matter what they're doing, even if they are in HR and they don't do anything except do paperwork all day, they themselves are benefiting our students. They are creating transformational experiences for our students, and that they are valued. So that's my entire job. And I also do recognition for teachers throughout the county. So for instance, we have County Teachers of the Year. I'm the person who runs that program. I help them apply at state and all that. It's a very, very cool job. And I'm kind of surprised every day that I get to do it.
Thank you so much.
Excellent questions. What else comes to mind?
I had one last question, and I don't know if I heard you right, but I think you mentioned that your loans were waived after you worked for some nonprofit. Is that true, or did I hear that wrong?
It is. Meredith, do you know what that program is called? It has slipped my mind entirely.
It's a really good question, and I should, but I don't offhand. But you talk, and I'll look up and
Okay.
see if I can find the program.
I'm going to give you broad strokes, and Meredith will be able to tell you exactly what it is. So the idea is that after a certain amount of time serving the public sector, and knowing that we aren't getting paid as much as other people, that you get a certain amount of your loans waived. So this is true for nonprofit workers, and I want to say it's also true for teachers who teach in Title I schools, I think. And then maybe government work of a certain kind, but not everybody. So I will just say as a caveat, things have changed this year, and I'll just let that lay. But also, even when it was a priority for the government to have this program, it was really difficult to navigate. It became easier, but it was tricky. What is the name?
It's the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program.
That's right.
And they paid off your loans that you had taken from like private organizations to cover your school?
Federal loans.
Oh, okay, so they paid back your federal loans. Okay, thank you.
I had to pay my private ones all by myself, which I did eventually. Took a long time. I see the link in the chat. Thank you very much for putting that in.
Excellent question. So as Kristen sort of alluded to, this is a program that has been around for a little while for anyone who is, you know, interested in pursuing a career where you would want to make use of this program. It's definitely one to be kind of keeping an eye on because we're in a time of a lot of change, and this is one of those areas where things might be changing. But it's been around. It certainly has been made use of by many people. It has some popularity, but yeah, keep an eye out. Great questions. Anything else come to mind? While I'm giving you all a couple minutes to
It looks like we
finalize
have
any thoughts.
someone's hand raised.
Oh, yes, please.
Hi. So for background, I'm an intensive psychology and sociology double major in my final year, thankfully. And I am hoping to after post grad, start working for nonprofits. It's been work that I've always wanted to go down the path of. And my question is just what long lasting impacts do you feel that you made when you were working for a nonprofit?
Oh, that's such a good question. So because I was in service of students the entire time, it was really helpful. So I'll just say the first program I ran was that internet safety program. So we would go in and we would do assemblies for kids, basic internet safety. This was especially important, a decade, 12 years ago. So teaching them basically just how to stay safe, how to maintain privacy, and how to watch out for themselves. And to come back to the same school year after year and have them tell us what they had been doing, how they saw something that was a little iffy and didn't go down that road or stop talking to that person or whatever. Hearing that direct feedback from those kids was really, really powerful. And then in my next position, I worked with those tutors who went into schools and worked with kids on building their literacy. And I will tell you that being a part of something, even though it wasn't my direct work, being a part of something that led children to love books, kids who struggled to even get through a sentence or two, by the end of the year, picking up a book for pleasure and just knowing that that would feed them for the rest of their lives. And that would help them as students, that would help them in their work later on, no matter what they end up doing. A love of reading is beneficial. So I think those are the things that most impact me and bring me joy. Like when I'm feeling a little down, that's what I think about. Thank you for I'm gonna cry. Thank you for asking that question.
Of course. And thank you so much for sharing.
Beautiful question. Any final ones? In the meantime, while folks are gathering thoughts for any last questions that you want to ask, I'm going to drop a couple of links in the chat here. So if you haven't already, there's the link for our raffle to enter for that and potentially win a tumbler. I also have a link here to see the other events that we have. And if you'd like to make a career advising appointment with me, that's for humanities majors and minors, specifically my career advising appointments. But all students, regardless of your major and minor, can also make an appointment with Career Success. I'm going to add the link to that in the chat very quickly too. So I encourage you, if you want to talk through your interests more, please take advantage of the resources that we have on campus. And then the other link there is just a feedback form. So if you can take a minute or two to fill that out, that's really helpful for us in planning future events and making sure that we design things that speak to you and the kinds of things that you'd like to hear about. Any final questions that you might have for Kristen? You all have asked some really great ones today. No? All right. Well, I will be writing to you all later. So if any questions come up later that you want me to pass along, feel free to send that in an email. And thank you so much to all of you for joining us today. I'm really grateful for your time, and I'm glad that you all took the time to fill your own cups, right? Taking the time to come to these kinds of events and to learn and to explore career possibilities. That's an act of service to yourself. And I'm really glad that you're doing it, and I'm glad that you're spending the time with us. Kristen, so tremendously grateful to you for your time and for sharing your expertise and your insights with all of us today. So with that, if you have any final questions and you want to stay on, we still have a couple minutes here, feel free. And if not, thank you so much for coming today. And I wish you a wonderful afternoon. Kristen, if you can stay on for a minute at the end here, that would be great.
Of course.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.